Hello, everyone. Welcome to Developing Palates. I am Aaron Loomis, and with me, as always, is June Liu. How you doing, June?
Good.
So today we are talking about the HR Claro 109. The cigar is 7.25 inches by 50 ring gauge. Comes out of the La Corona factory in Nicaragua. The wrapper is Ecuadorian Habano Claro, and the binder is from Jalapa. The filler is undisclosed. Blender is Hiroshi Rubena, Omar Gonzalez Alaman, and Spencer Drake. Price point is $10.95, and the cigar was released in July of 2016. So, with all those details out of the way, June, what was your pre-light experience like?
Pre-light was very good. I thought uh, wrapper had like a construction paper-like consistency. It was very toothy, Claro shade wrapper, which is very interesting. Like for Claro shade to be that toothy, usually I only see that kind of tooth on like a squirrel wrapper. So pretty cool. I thought. Things well pressed, seems tight and visible. Bunchy roll felt spot on. Nice uniform give throughout. That Conde 109 style head, which is super awesome, by the way. Totally reminds me of the Mundo Dantes, which is what this is copied off of. Finish off with a well-adhered thick quadruple cap. In terms of the nosing experience, wrapper, I got chestnuts, wet earth cedar. Um, when I nosed that partially enclosed foot, got sweet bread, white pepper and cedar, and cold draw, mixed nuts and dry cardboard. So uh, pretty good pre-light experience.
Yeah, wrapper was a light brown with a little bit of fine marbling to it. There was a decent number of veins that were visible, but they kind of actually like look right at home with how the marbling was. And along with the length of the cigar, it almost like you could see like the full leaf, like before it was rolled. You almost saw like the whole thing with all the entire vein structure and things like that. It looked pretty cool. The seams were easily visible, but they were smooth. And that 109 head was executed perfectly. The foot's partially covered with a little bit of wrapper that goes over. There was a single band. It's kind of the standard HR design, but for this line, it carries kind of a primarily white color with gold artwork and borders. The aroma from the wrapper was a great mix of leather and sweet hay. And the foot was a kind of a muted version of those wrapper aromas, which is kind of backwards to how I usually experience aromas. I typically get a stronger aroma from the foot than I do from the wrapper. Pre-light draw was a mix of like raisin and red pepper. Along with that, red pepper gave kind of nice tingle to my tongue and lips. So, in regards to my rating for this, for the kind of pre-light, this is the first time I've ever given an amazing rating, even though that translates nothing to the score. It's just kind of a
There
rating.
we go.
So it just looked it was a fantastic looking cigar. It smelled really good. Like pre-light, this is a winner. So let's get into flavor. What was your flavor experience like?
Um, so initial handful of draws, I got a mixture of toasted wood and hay. About a quarter inch in, I uh, black pepper, sweetbread, dry wood, acid initial profile. Through retrohaling, intense black pepper, sharp cedar, and mixed nuts. Finish medium in length, providing flavors of dry wood, mixed nuts, and subtle black pepper. In terms of body and strength, medium. Moving on to the second third. The second third's pretty similar flavors, but it's become subtle and faint. Still the same notes of the toasted wood, black pepper, dry wood, mixed nuts. Wood bitters started entering, and it created a greater range of earthiness. Still that retrohale, same retrohale persisted. Intense black pepper, sharp cedar, mixed nuts. Finish still medium length with flavors of dry wood, mixed nuts, and faint black pepper. Strength that within the second third, surprisingly, it went from medium to medium full, giving me a bit of a, like a little jolt or like a cloudy head to it. So, and the body remained at medium. We went on the last third. I thought the last third's depth of flavors started making a comeback, thankfully. No longer are the flavors subtle and faint. Instead, a profile that called for namely sweet cream bread and dry wood. Other pre-existing notes of the black pepper, toastiness, mixed nuts, they're still there, but it's more, they took more of a backseat. Retro still in change. Fierce black pepper, sharp cedar, mixed nuts. Finish still being medium length is slightly more black pepper and dry wood focused. And mixed nuts is less noticeable. Strength still medium full, body and still medium.
Yeah, the cigar began with like a very heavy black pepper along with a mellow cedar. And then at a quarter inch in, the black pepper really settled down while a little bit of cream kind of joined in to mix with the cedar. And then at a half inch in, the cream left and the cedar transitioned to a slightly dark oak. There was still some pepper present on a really long finish, and the retrohale was like primarily black pepper with a nice zing along with a little bit of wood in the background. At an inch in, the pepper bumped back up to mix with the oak. And then at an inch and a half, the cream increased, which kind of created a creamy and pepper oak mixture. And as the third was coming to a close, that pepper bumped up a little bit more and was still very prevalent on the long finish. And the strength was just slightly above medium for me. Then getting the second third, peppers up front with that creamy oak in the background. And then at a half inch in, the pepper was still dominant while the retrohale was like a slightly dark oak. And then at an inch in, the pepper began to blend into some of the earthiness that was joining in, while the kind of a slightly creamy oak was still in the background. And as the third was coming to a close, it was still primarily earthy with the oak in the background, and the strength had bumped up to medium full. And then in the final third, kind of continued on with that really earthy profile along with some oak. And the earthiness is also really what was present on the very long finish. And then at half inch in, the oak ramped up a little bit to become even with that earthiness. The retrohale was primarily oak with a little bit of the earthiness to it. And then an inch and a half in, the oak and the earthiness were in a pretty good balance. And that's kind of how the profile finished out for the cigar. And the strengths kind of maintained that medium full mark. So performance-wise for burn and draw, what was your experience like?
Good burn. I said the only downside to the burn was the heavy ash flowering. Uneven burn within the second third, which required just a little bit of a minor touch up. Ash's top tapped off by itself in solid inch and a half marks. Total smoking time was really long as expected. I smoked this in 3 hours. Draw perfect. It was just that right balance of the resistance and enough airflow to not cause any issues.
Yeah, the burn was slightly wavy for me the entire way, and then at the beginning of the final third, the cigar went out on me twice and required some relights. So that was a bit of a bummer. Ash held on in about inch and a quarter increments for me, so that was good. And the draw was just a little slightly tighter than I prefer, but not really a big deal. It didn't cause any issues for me. Just slight variance on what I prefer. So overall, what were your thoughts on the cigar?
Um, I overall enjoyed it. I kind of felt like within kind of like the main departments of what I look for in a cigar, like spice, sweetness, earth, retro finish, like it hit those well. It was, it wasn't like fantastic, but it hit it pretty well. For such a long cigar, I felt bored at times because the profile was a bit mundane and non-transitional and like building for me,
Mhm.
especially for, I mean, 3 hours of smoke with something like this, although it's a good, tasty profile, it's just boring at times. The cigar ADD kicked in. So,
Yeah, yeah.
also being a Claro shade, I was not expecting such a meaningful strength cigar. Really took me by surprise on that fact. So, perhaps this is your not your father's Claro shade. I don't know. But I think that was perhaps a good thing because I didn't expect it, and that's what I got out of it. It kind of caught me on my toes. So
Yeah.
I say overall a decently good HR.
Yeah, cigar was pretty pepper and earth dominant, which left things kind of out of balance for me for most of the cigar. I'm wondering if some time might kind of help balance out some of the flavors. But I'd also be interested in maybe trying it in a smaller vitola just to kind of see if there's any differences in the experience. Strength was medium plus, so it might be kind of out of range for some smokers. And I also wish the construction was a little bit better with, kind of the cigar going out on me a couple times. But overall, it was another interesting cigar from HR. I'm definitely interested in trying another Vitola or, kind of with more time. But kind of how noticed the cigar first, I saw the kind of the Vitola format, kind of the aromas. I was like, oh, maybe this is going to be really his, Hirochi shot at, uh, you know, getting as Cuban as he can with non-Cuban tobacco. But once I got into the smoking experience, it was nothing like that. Like you said, the strength level and the flavor is just, they kind of very different. I know you're not supposed to judge a cigar by the wrapper, but I did. I just kind of that's what I had in mind, but it wasn't that way. So it was interesting to see. I'm just curious to see maybe a smaller Vitola. might be a little bit different here. So score wise, I gave it a 6.07. You gave it a 6.73. How do you think that matches up with your experience?
It matched well. I mean, overall, I thought that it was a good rated tasting profile. And then with a fairly pretty good construction on it, and I'm expecting somewhere between that mid six to upper six.
Yeah, same for me. Flavor profile was good. Just a little bit of bummer on some of the burn points, but otherwise it's a good cigar. I don't want to keep going back to the Vitola, but like I said, 3 hour smoke. You know, even even if it was very good flavors, it may still get boring after 3 hours of time. So just something to keep in mind when you're smoking a cigar this size. Looks fantastic though. I got kudos on the way the cigar looks, but it smokes good. So that'd be my final thoughts. Anything else from me on this cigar?
Well, given the fact that HR has that homage to Cuban tobacco and Cuban cigars,
Hmm.
and the Cubans are notorious, in my opinion, for making good big cigars, like the double Coronas, the Conde 109 sizes, and things of that nature.
Hmm.
But I wish it was that.
Yep. Well, if you're just catching this video on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to us, but also check out the full written review on the website, developingpalates.com. Also follow us on all the social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Google+. You can also catch all of our review recaps on podcasts, so iTunes, Google Play, and Podbean. Thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you on the next one.